Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm the Grey Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. We are going to be starting our day off today with a masculine, feminine, non-binary energy update. And we're going to start today with the masculine headspace. We're going to be utilizing the tarot of the divine for the headspace of masculine. Can I please get 3 cards, please? 3 cards we are starting our day off with today are the 8 of Swords in its upright, the Star card in its reversal, in combination with the Death card in its reversal. Let's talk a little bit about this energy here, because that is some heavy stuff. That is some Saturn. That is some Saturn in Aries energy right there. Let's talk about it. So what are we effectively seeing here? So one of the things that we want to talk about, the word unrequited is coming up. But the thing I want to describe, and this is a continuation of what we effectively see in relationality to working through, right? Working through the span of the emotions, right? And this is the thing about it. And we often experience this. We're moving into Pisces season now. And the thing you want to identify is the emotions that we don't face have control over us, right? And why do we say this is a continuation of the lessons that we saw working through Aquarius season, right? And it has to do with the deniability of emotions, and that's the sad truth of it. There are no emotions that we can deny, right? Because what happens, right? What happens when we deny emotions? Everyone else has to deal with them. Right? When we deny emotions, everybody like we think we're in the space of denying emotions, and there's everybody around us having to deal with the emotions that we're trying to avoid, right? And this is what we talk about in relationality to avoidant behavior. And sometimes, like, I like to point out, like, like the avoidant behavior that we have often articulates like a massive blind spot, right? It's like the space by which, like, when you go like this, right? And you don't want to look at something, like everybody else sees, like everybody else sees this, right? And we're like, look at me, I'm doing a really good job not facing something. And meanwhile, everybody else is clear to everybody else that there's that avoidance point, right? There's that like pop, pop, pop. So we often see this. And this is what we talk about in relationality to emotional intelligence. And the thing about it, emotional intelligence is vulnerable stuff, right? Like, if you want to be emotionally intelligent, prepare to feel really vulnerable, because it's the observation that the only way that we get stronger in something is if we're ready to navigate the vulnerability that we must feel in order to get better at it, right? And this is why we talk about the false precept that humility, the difference that we understand that humility is understanding the pathwork by which one is constantly seeking to learn, right? It's the work by which we are constantly seeking to understand. And so this is what we effectively see that's happening right now for a lot of the masculine energy on the healing journey. And this is also why I feel like a lot of that energy gets very frustrated at the unhealed portion of their own energetic spectrum, because the modality by which this energy frequently feels the fact that they have to carry the weight of the unhealed portion on their back is often the calibration point in understanding how others, right, understanding others' trepidation as it relates to healing with them, right? This is a lot of the empathy. I keep on hearing the empathetic isolation that is characterized in relationality to trying to do something better. right? Because when you're trying to do something better, you're not falling back. You're not falling back on what feels easy. You're not falling back on what feels energetically convenient. And I think it's interesting too, because like I keep on getting for a lot of this masculine energy, working through the fact, and I keep on hearing your spiritual journey in healing masculine will feel like a riot, right? Because it's the space by which you understand and identify the modality by which you work so hard to set that standard, and then you feel the violation when others don't hold it the way that you yourself do, right? So there's a lot of empathy that we see that is happening for a lot of that energy, and a lot of it has to stem from the way that they hold and navigate the feeling of vulnerability. This is a continuation of yesterday's work, right? Because our ability to understand that vulnerability is a gift is how we work to heal relationship. Because what happens, right? When you talk about, and this is what you'll often see with masculine energy that hasn't healed this properly. How's that love-hate relationship with vulnerability going, right? How's that love-hate relationship with vulnerability going, right? You can't articulate the fact that there's something that you find terrible, anathema, within the self, and then identify that that is the highest thing you seek outside and counterpart, because that's the space. But be ready to project, right? Be ready to project. You can't give different directives to the unconscious. You can't say to the unconscious, there's something that I revile in myself and something that I seek outside in relationship. Because the modality by which you do that, don't be surprised if when you find that ideal, you start to treat it terribly, right? Because you're working out all of those bitter feelings that you have about the vulnerability within yourself on the energy that you claim to care about that is expressing those qualities and characteristics. And so we see here that this is a lot of the, and I like to see this because this is a lot of the masculine energy that's understanding that the pathwork to harmonious relationship, this is what we mean when we say it starts in here, right? And we don't mean that in a lovey-dovey way. We mean fix it. We mean fix get to work, get crank, get chopping, get into that space where you start healing your relationship to the vulnerability you find in yourself and then see what it does to your relationships. Right? Now, this brings us to the feminine energy. And for feminine energy, again, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to, we're going to be utilizing, I'm feeling Smith-Waite Centennial deck for the headspace of feminine right now. 3 cards. One, two, one more. We've got here the 3 of Cups in its upright, the Magician card in its reversal, and the 7 of Pentacles in its upright. A lot of cup energy right now in the headspace of feminine. And the thing about it, I keep on seeing, is a continuation as it relates to working into compassion is entirely proportional on appreciation, right? Compassion and appreciation, 2 sides of the same coin, right? And this is often what we see that is happening right now for a lot of feminine that is working into the space of setting or identifying those healthy boundaries. And a lot of that proportionality that we're effectively recognizing there has to do with the sense of building into, right? Building into the context of healing, right? And this is what's beautiful for a lot of the feminine energy, recognizing the divisiveness of comparison, right? The most divisive thing that has ever been thrown at feminine is pathwork of comparison, right? Because when feminine is working so much into the context of comparing themselves to others, they don't get to they don't make any progress in finding their own exquisite. right? It doesn't create the space. Like there's no room for exquisite when you're constantly comparing yourself, right? And it often creates, and comparison pathwork is pathwork of perpetual despair, right? Because there's always something else to compare the self to, right? It's never ending. And often the modality by which, and I see like a lot of the feminine working on some deep healing in this way, feeling a lot of feelings coming up, understanding that traumatic spaces are often built upon comparison, right? The space by which another person says, "What makes you different?" instead of "Tell me why you are unique," is the difference by which another person is looking outside of the self at a template rather than recognizing and identifying what allows us to be able to embody and identify that part of the self that is so energetically exquisite. And I like this because a lot of this energy of feminine is working on like I keep on hearing like they're working on the space by which like I just keep on hearing like it's the energy that's like just paying attention, right? They're paying attention to how others to how others speak upon it. They're paying attention, right? Like when you want to identify the space by which you yourself feel that sense of understanding, right? This is the energy that doesn't work, right? I feel like this is a lot of energy that no longer is in the space of trying to strive in the context of another person comparing them to something else, but rather like letting their feet legs do the talking, right? Being like, that's interesting. Bum, 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 bum. Just going, I'm going to go over there now. Nope, I got to go. Bye. Bye. You see the energy right? Because you don't get anywhere with that. You don't get anywhere with that, right? You don't get anywhere with that. And so we see that for a lot of energy doing that work, right? I feel like it feels very much, right? And it's interesting because I feel like and it's interesting too because it has to do with how the energy is perceiving itself, right? So and that's the thing I see that's difficult right now between masculine and feminine, right? Because for masculine, we see that masculine is looking at their own energy with a lot of that vitality or a lot of that energy by which they effectively articulate their frustration in relationality to working through the energetic frustration as it relates to how much harder it makes the energy that's truly on the pathwork of healing. While a lot of the feminine is working into the space of identifying, right, the feminine energy being a welcoming place, right? Like changing the energetic narrative of feminine being a welcoming place, not in the space by which they compare, but in the space by which they effectively embrace each other for the uniqueness that they are. And this is how we see that the energies are effectively healing within the context of their own energetic space self. Now, this brings us to non-binary energy. And for non-binary energy right now, we're going to be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego. 3 cards, please. 1, 2, 3. We've got here ooh, we got a spinner. Alright, we've got that's transverse. Okay. Stop moving. Okay. Sorry. A little we got a little chaotic card. Got a little chaotic card hanging out. Woo. Oh, look, the Wheel of Fortune. Okay, that makes sense. So we've got the Wheel of Fortune and it's upright. Okay. We've got the 2 of Wands that, like, would not stop spinning. It was going like this. I wish you guys well, if you were following on the clock app, you probably saw it. The 2 of Wands in its reversal in its transverse, and the 5 of Pentacles in its upright. Now let's talk a little bit about this energy here, because I wanna describe the thing that we're seeing with a lot of this energy is working into, right? It's working into the and I'm not it's Pisces, it's a Pisces energy, right? I feel like there's potentially something happening there as it relates to emotional expansion. And what we're effectively identifying, and I like to point this out, there are many different ways to work through emotional expansion. But the emotional expansion that we often feel, and it almost feels like a bit of a solar plexus expansion, which is the space of being able to feel many different things at once. And I want to describe everything I keep on seeing when I read into this energy articulates the fact that they're very deeply invested in understanding their own complication, right? And this is what we talk about with the mystery of the self, right? The self is always a mystery. There's always a aspect of the self that feels like it's ineffable, right? And when we are energetically, and this is the nice thing, when we are effectively centered in the self, we are obsessed with our own mystery in the best way possible, right? Which is the work by which we recognize that we can never fully understand the self, right? The unconscious is a place by which even when you map it, there's more to explore, right? Like that's the nature of the unconscious. You're like, oh look, I mapped this part of the unconscious. Oh look, just keeps going. Oh, you know what I mean? Like just keeps going. I don't know how long it looks really far down there, right? But the recognition of being able to understand, right? The excitement and the delight that we bring to understanding the self becomes a delight for everybody around us, right? You want to talk about making yourself a safe space? Get very invested in mapping your own unconscious, right? Because the space is that when you go in there, right? Like when you go in there, you find weird stuff, but then you also work to understand it. You work to energetically resolve it. And the space by which the more you get to understand, the more you understand and resolve it, the more that it becomes a gift to everyone around the self, right? Because it's the space by which you're weird, but you own your weirdness. You're like, yeah, like it's just, it's just like, and this is the hard part about it, right? Because what happens, and this is what happens, and then we talk about why you need to do your shadow work. What happens when somebody else is avoiding the self, right? When another person is residing in the house of the self and they're doing everything they can to avoid the work of understanding the self, what triggers, right? What triggers someone who's avoiding the work of understanding the self? Another person who is delighting in the journey of understanding, right? Because the first thing you have to do in order to overcome that is navigate the fear of the self. And the fear of the self is a big thing, right? There's a lot of that. There's a lot of those anxieties. There's a lot of those worries. And often, and this is why we talk about the fact that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, because a lot of the harm, right? A lot of the harm that happens on this earth, unfortunately, happens from energy that would rather project harm in another than do the important vital work in understanding in healing the fear they feel in finding vulnerability within. And this is why we have to understand there is no more precious gift than the vulnerability that we find within ourselves, even if we feel energetically frightened when we find it there, because this is what we recognize. This is a quality and characteristic of vulnerability. Vulnerability holds hands with fear because it is the space by which we articulate something that we energetically care about. And what happens, right? What happens if you don't heal the fear connected to vulnerability? Then anyone who loves you will never feel your love. They'll never feel the love because you're too afraid to be vulnerable. They'll only feel the fear. And that's when love becomes terrifying. Because if you want to understand that most of the trauma that happens on this earth does not happen because another person wants to hurt another individual, it has to do with not healing the association of the fear that is connected to vulnerability. And when we don't heal it, nobody feels the good part of love, which is the vulnerability, but they feel instead all of the fear that we carry with the fact that we have that vulnerability. And that becomes another person's trauma. So this is a lot of the energy that works into, right? They work into the space of bravery, and they don't do it for the self. They do it because they've experienced that. They do it because they know that path work far, far too well. They understand how devastating and dangerous it is when you're not navigating and finding the bravery to confront the fear attached to vulnerability, because that is how they themselves have been hurt in the past. Now, this brings us back to the masculine energy. 3 cards for masculine, and we're going to be utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck for the heart space of masculine. 1, 2, 3. We've got here the 7 of Wands in its upright, the King of Wands in its upright, and the 8 of Pentacles in its upright. So let's talk a little bit about this energy here. And I want to point out we've got some cohesion that's happening in these cards that I want to bring to your attention. Why? Because we've got a 7 of Pentacles in the headspace of feminine. We've got an 8 of Pentacles in the heart space of masculine. Now, what does that effectively communicate to us? There's a lot of this a lot of the masculine energy that's working on healing right now, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. Recognizing that the journey of healing is active listening, right? There's a lot of energy of masculine that's recognizing that a lot of the false premises that they've built in relationality to a connection with feminine, being like, did you hear that from a feminine? Or did you hear that from a masculine that claimed to know feminine? Right? And this is what happens. Like, you want to talk about idolatry, right? The idolatry that we create in the false premise of believing something about another, not because that we know them, but because it talks more about how we feel about ourselves than it does about them, right? And this is why we see that a lot of the masculine energy is coming to grips with the fact that a lot of the false premises about feminine have more to do with the fantasy, right? The fantasy of unhealed masculine that sees feminine in the modality of something to be energetically feared, right? Because again, let's talk about this. What happens when you haven't healed the vulnerability that you find within yourself? Then anywhere you see vulnerability, you feel fear. So do you see how dangerous it is for the energetic connection by which another person articulates that they fear the vulnerability within the self, and then you're surprised when you have fear in relationality to the energy by which you seek that vulnerability, right? Then the fear acts as a mirror, right? And our ability to face our fear clarifies that mirror. So we see that for a lot of the masculine energy, right, the articulation of literally having to see unhealed masculine pontificate on feminine, having never even heard, listen, and I see the energy going, you're articulating a lot about feminine. When was the last time you spoke to feminine, right? You have a lot to say. You have a lot to say about the quality and nature of feminine. When was the last time you truly sat down and connected with feminine, right? Because the difference between a bias, right? The difference between a bias and a connection is conversation, right? The difference between an assessment from proximity versus being in proximity is the modality by which we come to understand. And so the path of exploring is built upon learning. So we see that this is a lot of the masculine energy getting much more attenuated, right? Like getting much more attenuated to being able to notice or recognize the masculine energy that puts through the qualities and recognition of active listening, right? The space by which another person says, I know this, trust me, versus I know because I asked, right? Like, I know, trust me, versus I know because I asked. I asked. I had a conversation. I brought the question to the person rather than making a gross assumption, right? And that's what a gross assumption is. A gross assumption is seeing something from the outside that you have no understanding of, and then believing profoundly that you know what's energetically happening. Failing, but being and then being like, "Did you talk to them about that?" "No, why? Because I was too afraid." Oh, there's that fear again, right? And when we carry fear, we often have the tendency of building gross assumptions, right? Because it's like, I'll just build an assumption on it instead of just asking, instead of just asking. Now this brings into and this is what's beautiful, right? This is what's beautiful about a lot of the masculine energy, understanding, right? Love is in the asking, right? Who doesn't love a beautiful question, right? And that's what we keep on seeing. There's something really beautiful about I keep on hearing there's something very interesting that's happening in the heart space of masculine, working through the difference between gross assumptions and beautiful questions. Now we continue into the feminine energy, feminine heart space, and we're going to be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego for the heart space of feminine right now. 3 cards, please. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. We've got here the King of Wands in its reversal. This should look familiar. We just drew the King of Wands in its upright here. We have the King of Cups in its upright. A lot of king energy right now in the heart space of feminine. 5 of Swords in its upright. What makes a king, right? That's what we're effectively seeing. And I keep on and the thing about it, and this is what we see is particularly and especially, right? Right, we've got the King of Cups here, and the King of Cups is the king of active listening, right? That's what the King of Cups is. It's a king of active listening. They sit on the water, right? They have the balanced emotions. They listen to themselves. They hold 2 cups. Why does the King of Cups hold 2 cups? They hold their own emotions. They're teaching us the lesson that say when we learn to hold our emotions in a state of balance, guess what happens? We find the capability, we find the expansion point. It's amazing, right? You want to be able to expand? Start being able to carry your emotions. See how much bandwidth you find in being able to find space to hold others, right? It's the generosity that grows because we put our force of intention on things. Our limitations are our limitations when we feel energetic frustration from things and walk away, right? When you get stronger, you can hold things for longer. But the only way that you can hold something for longer is if you go through the frustration of feeling something that allows you to come into the space of expansion. Your expansion is on the other side of your frustration. And when you recognize that, and we recognize it in every other context except in the space of emotions, right? Your emotional bandwidth will exponentially increase, and it starts with your own ability to navigate your own, and this is why disassociation is so detrimental and dreadful, because and this is a continuation of what we learn with Aquarius lessons. There's no such thing as not feeling emotions, and when you think that you've turned them off, you've let them control everything. You can't put your emotions somewhere. You can't hide your emotions. You put them into the unconscious and now they're everywhere. Now everywhere you look, there are those emotions that you don't want to face, right? Everybody else is going to have to deal with them. So the observation of being like emotional responsibility is the ability to effectively articulate and recognize this. And feminine is exhausted, right? Feminine is energetically exhausted because feminine often feels that they have to carry the weight of the emotions of others who don't want to have the responsibility for them in their life, right? The emotionality, the space by which the feminine often feels like they have to make bandwidth for those that don't want to be responsible for their own emotions. This is a lot of the feminine that says, right? Paying like the space of the feminine saying that when they do that, it's not doing anybody any favors, right? Because this is the feminine that understands that when you carry something for another person and you don't let them know you're carrying it, you're condoning their own vulnerability. You're not actually helping them. You're hurting them. And when feminine recognizes this, right? When feminine realizes this, then feminine starts to articulate more, and they don't articulate from a place of anger, right? They don't articulate from a place of volatility. They articulate with emphaticness, saying to another person, "I care about you and I want you to be strong," right? I would rather you be strong than have to navigate the feeling of energetically always being wrong. Because what happens, right? When we can't handle frustration, we walk away from our blessings. Your blessing will frustrate you. Your blessing will energetically irritate you. Your blessing will make you feel things that you have never felt before. So, the modality of understanding that the ability to effectively not carry the emotions for others, this is feminine that's recognizing there's no gift, right? You are not a saint if you're carrying the emotions of others. You're actually weakening them. You're weakening them. You're making them more vulnerable. You're making them less able to carry them for themselves. The strength that we find is not recognized in the feminine as being gentle, but being firm and being articulate in relationality to understanding the significance and the importance of doing vital work. And that is not the space. And here's the feminine recognizing that if another person sees that as the feminine being on their case, then they're not very invested in their healing journey, are they? And you can't get anywhere with someone that does not aspire to do the work, right? It builds upon, and this is the feminine recognizing that the emotions are not there to heal, they're there to discern. Emotions can heal everything, but only if they're combined. Our emotions are sublime because when they're combined, they can heal everything. But when they are held in by themselves, they are a discernment engine. Continuing to get clarification, and this is moving us back towards non-binary, heart space of non-binary, we'll be utilizing the Tarot of the Divine. 3 cards, please. Mhm. 1, 2, 3. We have here the Magician card in its upright, the Justice card in its upright, and the 10 of Swords in its upright. And this is the like, this right here, this is what I mean in relationality to this energy working through. Like, this is why that 2 of Wands was spinning like crazy when I dropped it on the table, right? Because this is the energy, right? This is energy like a wheel. I got to tell you, Wheel of Fortune, 2 of Wands is like the perpetual motion machine of energetic activation. It is the energy that often feels like and I keep on getting the energy that had to effectively work upon their own energetic. There's nothing more frustrating than when another person says, "Oh, like, oh, you're so in tune," and another person goes, "Thank you. I needed to do that to survive." Like, I see the energy. Where'd you get? Oh, where did you get that? Where did you get that attunement? Survival. Survival. And it shouldn't be necessary, right? Like, that's what I see the energy saying. Should not like, a lot of rage being held with that, right? There's something to be said about a healing journey that one feels like it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, right? There's something, and this is what I keep on seeing with a lot of that energy, working into the space of being like, yeah, that healing journey, you see, it wasn't a luxury, it's a necessity, right? And it has to do with being able, and the energy saying, yeah, how to get, I looked at uncomfortable things, right? And I think there's something really important that I see there as it relates to a lot of the energy working through their own rage. Because often the space, I keep on hearing, often the space of entitlement, right? The space of entitlement is articulated in the observation of navigating, seeing necessity and making the false premise of choice there, right? Our entitlement shows when we see somebody operating out of a state of need and saying, why did you make that choice? Right? That's another person's entitlement showing. And I feel like this energy has often feels like everywhere they look, what is it what do they see? Entitlement, because they are on an energetic journey by which they became who they needed to in order to survive. And another person says, "Why do you keep insisting on making those choices? Why do you keep on making the why don't you just make different choices?" As if you could. As if you could, as if something that you do from a place of need was as easy as making a choice. And so this is why I've got like there's a lot of like I feel like there's a lot of energetic fire in the heart space there, because the frustration, the absolute rage you feel when you encounter entitlement, and often, and this is a hard part with entitlement, entitlement sometimes entitlement is not some a lot like the hard part with entitlement is there's some entitlement that can only be navigated via the education, right? And then that's the hard part with entitlement, which is there's different modalities of entitlement. There is the entitlement, and this is what I keep on seeing, there is the entitlement that seeks to know, right? There is the and this is why it was spinning. There is the entitlement that seeks to know, which is the energy by which another person, and you cannot, and here's the thing about it, you cannot fault someone. You cannot fault someone. It's also entitlement for faulting someone who has not had to experience trauma. Nobody can help. Nobody can help the fact. Nobody can help the fact that they didn't experience trauma, right? Sometimes, like this is why we don't compare. We do not get in a trauma comparison game, right? We cannot control, but we can control our ability of wanting to understand more, right? We can control our ability of seeking to know, and the knowing is what is divine, right? The desire to understand and the desire to grow is the most sublime divine gift that we have, because that understanding is and this is why you have to be humble, right? You have to be humble if you seek to know, because it's the space by which you articulate the fact that you don't know everything. How can you learn more unless you are willing to grow? And so this is the energy that has become very, very attenuated in being able to see the differences in entitlement, which is the entitlement that seeks to understand, the entitlement by which another person says, "I genuinely don't know. I wish you could help me understand more," right? The place by which our heart, that is a heart opening, right? The space by which another person says, I need you to open up so that I can understand, versus the entitlement that comes from the directive of another person that refuses to learn more. The entitlement by which another person feels that their experience is the complete one. And if you're ever unsure, if you're on the wrong path, feeling like you know everything is usually a sign that you are way off track, right? The modality by which you recognize or operate or feel that and this is a thing, best, what we identify is best is recognizing the difference between something that is best and generous. A good best is a generous best, which means something that we feel is something that we would eagerly give another person. When our best is generous, then we come into the space of building healthy things. But when our best is self centered, when our best is only navigating the directive of the self, then we have the space by which we feel everything needs to be saved. Notice that tendency? You found the best. Oh, you found no, everything needs to be saved, because everything is a mission by which you need to apply your best to things. And this is what we talk about the fact of saying, be wary of love that feels like it must correct, because love is listening, right? Love is listening and navigating and serving to the need of love. Love is not directive and saying, I know what needs to happen there. I know what needs to be done. Continuing, and this is energy that has experienced that over and over again. Not the fact that they've experienced trauma, but they've had to go through the experience of trauma that was disguised as love, that was trying to correct instead of embrace. Continuing to get clarification, moving into the unconscious of masculine. Again, bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. We're going to be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego for the heart space, the unconscious of masculine. 3 cards, please. 2, 3. We've got here the Ace of Pentacles in its reversal. That card's been coming up a lot lately. The 6 of Cups in its reversal. And yeah, the High Priestess in its reversal. I'm not surprised to see that there too. So let's talk a little bit about this. And this has to do like it's a conversation. And I keep on hearing, we are not here. We are not here to fix each other. We're not here to there is nobody, if you do not feel fixed, I hate to break this to you, there's nobody on this planet that's going to fix you. And there's nothing more detrimental than looking at things and going, a little of that would fix me. No, it won't. There's not a little of anything on this earth that will energetically fix the heart space unless we invest in the work on the self. But you'll often see this, right? What will you often see in those that are not, they're not in the space by which they desire to heal, right? They feel the energetic violation in another person refusing to fix them, right? The space by which another person goes, my life would be perfect if I had that. My life would be perfect if I had that. You're denying me the thing that would allow my life to be perfect. That happens from within. It's not people. People do not fix our emotional conditions, but you'd be surprised those that feel entitled to other people because they don't want to do the work on themselves. And so they see everyone around them as something that they can effectively possess, that they feel that they have the energetic right to. And what do you often see with the unhealed? You are denying me the right to your person. Nobody has a right to another person. Relationships are often, you'll often see the energy, right? You see the grasping, right? The angry clutch of someone whose heart is not healed, who says, I am angry because I don't have that relationship. I am angry. How dare you deny me? How dare you deny me the relationship that would fix me? And do you see the ugliness? Do you see the ugliness that arises as that person articulates? Do you see all of the fear that they have not worked on coming through in the fact that their desire is reaching for things that then run from them and then say, where are you going? Right? This is why we heal our heart space, because relationships are not, we are not owed relationships by anyone. But those who often have not done the work to heal their heart space, you'd be surprised because they try to build energetic conditions by which they articulate the fact that they feel very much like they should be owed one. And the modality by which we understand and recognize that quality, right? That quality of you owe me, right? There is nothing more energetically ugly than the space of saying you owe me when it comes to relationship, when it comes to partnership. We are gifts to each other. When we give things to each other, they are energetic gifts, right? And gifts are not given. Gifts are not given with the sense of expecting something reciprocated in return. So we see that even a lot of the energy working through these experiences, articulating and identifying. This is why I see a lot of the masculine working through the frustration at other masculine energy. It feels self-directed. It's the masculine almost saying to masculine, do you understand how abominable? Do you understand how monstrous you appear to everybody in your experience when you get angry about the fact that you don't have a blissful relationship and you say somebody owes me a blissful partnership? somebody somebody owes me a blissful partnership. You're right, someone does. You should take that up to the front desk of the self. You should really take that up to the front desk of the self. You should run that one upstairs, right? You should run that up. When was the last time you ran that one upstairs, right? And this is what we see. And this is a lot of the energy that articulates. That says, if you want to find something, Stop being angry at it. Start thinking that it is sacred. When you want something, stop being angry that it is there. Start being patient because it is sacred. While we see for the feminine energy right now, unconscious of feminine, 3 cards, please. And we're going to be utilizing for the feminine unconscious, the tarot of the divine. 1, 2, 3. We've got here the Page of Coins in its upright, the 6 of Coins in its reversal, and the 6 of Wands in its reversal. So there's a lot, and I have to point out, there's a lot of 6 energy right now in the unconscious of both masculine and feminine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what one feels most aligned to. 6s in the tarot are a card of harmony. 6s are a card of harmony. The number 6 is often associated with harmony in tarot. So what we're effectively identifying is, again, make it make sense, right? The dysregulation that demands harmony. You can't make this stuff up. Feminine is far too used to this, right? The dysregulation always demands harmony, right? You can't demand harmony, right? Harmony is something that you blend into, right? Harmony is something that you listen to. You listen, right? You listen and then you join into it, right? That's how you find harmony. You look at something and say, what do I have to do? How can I add? How can I energetically contribute? What can I put forth to create better harmony? Right? Dysregulation demands harmony because dysregulation refuses to energetically contribute to harmony and then gets angry that there isn't any harmony to be found. Right? It's the space by which you often see, right? And the space by which, and make it make sense. The wild paradox in the identification of someone demanding harmony actually creates disharmony, right? If you've got a bunch of energy that's harmonic, right? You've got a bunch of energy that's working in harmony, and then someone walks in and starts demanding harmony, they've created disharmony, right? We carry disharmony with us. And often the space by which we feel energetically disharmonious is why we can't find it. And this is why we see that for a lot of the feminine, working through experiences of navigating, healing from experiences by which energy tried to create a disharmony within the self. A good way of creating disharmony within the self, right? If you want to go fast, comparison, right? The modality by which another person, instead of seeing one's exquisiteness, tries to come into the place of comparison is often the space by which another person says, right, that another person finds another person lacking because they're not like another person. And what happens, and this is why comparison is often, when you see comparison, you don't stick around for it. You walk away and you keep walking. Because what happens when another person's comparing you to somebody? They'd say, I'd rather have that. Hmm? What did you just say? Wait. Let me get this straight. Walk me through this again. Did you just compare me to them? Did you just articulate a comparison to them? Because what you're really saying there is you'd rather have that. Because that's all comparison says. Comparison literally, when you remove the minutia from comparison, and another person compares you to another person, right? In a negative way, what they're really saying is, I'd rather have that. Why would you ever stay? Why would you ever stay in a modality by which another person says, and when you think about comparison like that, why would you ever stay when someone said, I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that. I'd rather have that. Okay, go. Have fun. Have fun with that. Right? When somebody says, right? Here's the thing about it. And this is why I see feminine healing, right? This is how you see feminine healing, right? When somebody says, when you look at comparison that says, I'd rather have that, what do you say? Have fun with that. Have fun. Knock yourself out. Knock yourself I gotta go. Right? Have fun with that. It's fine. You don't stick around. You don't argue it. You don't try to praise you don't try to escalate yourself. What are you doing? What are you like? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. When somebody says, "I'd rather have that," you say, "Not you." You go knock yourself up. You go knock your. You go climb that tree. I'll be right here. You go for it. Yeah, I'll be right here with you. I'll be here. I'll be waiting for you. You knock yourself out. You go for it. You go for it. Oh no, I gotta go. And you don't stick around for conversation. And then that energy goes, where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Right? Where'd you go? Some things don't require conversation. Some things don't require conversation, right? And this is why I see this is a lot of feminine that says, right? Like when I keep on getting and I keep on hearing, and what is the sound of bliss? Loving your life, right? And this is a lot of the feminine that says, I don't have any time for comparison. I'm too busy loving my life. Right? And when you're in that space of loving your life, I guarantee you, if you become very invested in loving your life, you're going to figure out you don't have time for comparison anymore. You don't have time for that. It's exhausting. Why would you ever want to compare when you could be spending that time loving your life as fully as much as you can? And then what's beautiful about it is when you love your life, you become a joy for everyone around you. Right? It's the gift that keeps on giving, right? That joy is the most replenishable resource, and it's the coolest thing. Because here's the best part about joy, there's always more of it. I can give you all my joy, and guess what? I still got a whole bunch. I've actually got more now. I got more now, right? I got more joy than I started with because I gave you some of mine. And when we recognize that, I see this energy kind of moving through. And this is why, right? This is why when someone comes demanding harmony and we walk away and they go, I demand a conversation, being like, your demand is why you can't find it. We don't demand things, we give towards them. And that is the gift that we have. That is the gift back to a world by which we're always trying to make better. Continuing to get clarification, non-binary energy, unconscious, we'll be utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck. 3 cards, please. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see here. We've got the 8 of Wands in its upright. We've got the Page of Swords in its upright. And we have the Devil card in its reversal. So what are we effectively seeing that's happening right now in the unconscious? And this has to do, and I need to stress this. This is a continuation of what I've been seeing in this unconscious space. This is energy. I keep on hearing, this is energy that's given up on trying to convince someone that they're not the dramatic one long ago. Trauma loves drama. Trauma loves drama. And here's the funny thing about trauma. When you walk away from trauma, you will be identified as the source of drama. When you walk away from trauma, you will be identified as the source of drama. Right? And this is and I need to point out this is energy that is very attentive to that. This is energy that when I keep on hearing, this is energy when another person talks about someone, they're like, "Tell me all about it." No, I'm all ears. No, please go on. Yes, please tell me about the dramatic one. I keep on hearing them go, tell me about the dramatic one, right? Because the observation of recognizing, when you recognize that trauma loves drama, when you recognize that trauma loves drama, and often what you will experience when you walk away from trauma is that another person will identify that the trauma will identify you as a dramatic one, right? This is the energy that goes, please, can you please tell me more about this dramatic energy? Tell me all about it, right? I would love to learn more about this dramatic energy because it is being able to recognize and identify, right, the source, right? The source of the actual issue, right? And this is the energy that has become very good, right? They become very, very good at hearing what another person is saying, right? Not what they want, not what they're saying, but what they're actually saying, right? The ability to understand, having gone through experiences, I keep wondering, having gone through experiences by which they themselves have had to escape trauma and being articulated as the dramatic one, right? I see this energy being like, please tell me Like when they see somebody articulating about something, going, "Yes, please, no, 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 please tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more about this drama. Tell me more about this drama." Right? Because they themselves are very good at energetically assessing through others' conversations what was actually happening. Bottom of the deck on this reading, moving into the masculine, moving back towards masculine. We're utilizing the Smith-Waite Centennial deck for the bottom of the deck for masculine. This Four of Pentacles has been coming up a lot, right? And this is a lot of the energy that recognizes, right? This is why possessiveness ruins everything, right? When we understand that we are gifts to each other, we understand that possessiveness is something that we have to heal within ourselves, right? When you try to possess something, you break it, right? The modality by which we articulate how much we mean to each other is articulated in what we give forth to one another, not the space by which we try to energetically control one another, right? And this is a lot of the energy of masculine that is working through the context of understanding. And this is the thing about it. This is what's hard. That desire, right? That desire to control is natural, right? It is one of our baser instincts. And this is why we call it a base. This is why we call it a base instinct, right? Because we understand that in a cruel world, right? And we understand that in trauma environments, the things that would effectively hurt us in a healthy place protect us in an unhealthy one. So when we think of our possessiveness as a trauma response, right? As a trauma response to a cruel world, we become very, very invested in working to heal it. And that doesn't mean it's ever gone, but we're ever attentive to our own related triggers as it relates to the tendency. While we move into feminine unconscious, and we'll be utilizing for feminine right now the tarot of the divine, the Empress in its upright. And so this is this is the energy of the emperor. Like this is the feminine that's working through, right? As you will heal, you'll probably be less liked. I'm sorry to say it. As you will heal, you'll probably be less liked. Because energy that feels, like I said, you've got a bunch of energy. Look, you got a bunch of energy here that wants to be energetically possessive, that feels that they are owed energy from other people. So what is going to happen? You've got energy that feels that others owe them energy, right? And as you do the work to have those healthy boundaries, right? Be prepared for immediately encountering someone who's going to take your healing journey personally, right? They're going to be like, why aren't you giving me the energy I'm owed from you? And being like, and having to be like, we don't owe anybody anything. We're each other's gifts, right? We go where's energetically necessary. And the space by which we're enjoying each other's lives is not in the space by which we demand from one another, but the space by which we energetically appreciate. So this is a lot of the feminine that just making peace. I know it's painful, making peace with the fact that you're healing, you will be healing, and another person will say they're not nice, right? You'll be healing, and it doesn't mean that you're not nice, but if another person feels energetically demanding and they're not building into the context of listening, actively listening towards feminine, this is the feminine that just makes peace with the fact that that is the condition by which they will heal, right? They will be energetically healing, and there will be those that have hard feelings about it. And that's the feel like that is the feminine that understands that it's okay if something's hard as long as you understand the context or the reason why someone has those hard feelings. While moving towards non-binary space, we'll be utilizing, make that go. We'll be utilizing this, no, not this one. Oh, there it is. We'll be utilizing the Tarot del Fuego, unconscious, the Emperor in its reversal. These are some heavy cards today. We got the Empress in its upright on bottom of the deck and the Emperor in its reversal. And I wanna stress, like, that Emperor and its reversal, like, this is a continuation of what we see in the other unconscious spaces, right? This is the energy that says even though they recognize it, it doesn't make it less painful, you know? Like, that's what I keep on seeing, right? The space by which they often feel that they're this is energy that gave up, like, and I wanna describe this. When we talk about surrendering, this is what we mean by surrender, right? It's the energy that articulates that they've never given up on themselves, right? This is the energy that says, "I've never given up on myself, but I've had to give up on others' perceptions of me in order to move closer towards the self," right? The modality or the circumstance by which they've often felt, right? And this is why I see that even when they receive apologies, right? The apology doesn't feel in, like, I keep on hearing the only thing nicer than an apology is an apology at the moment that it's necessary, is what I keep on seeing. Because the modality by which another person articulates to us after a period of time that they owe us an apology for something that happened long ago is the space by which we've had to carry that weight, right? It's the space by which we've carried that weight all that way, and it makes us stronger. But it's almost the space by which we ourselves, I keep on seeing, it's not the reason, right? It's not the reason. It's not based upon the need for something. It's the energy that often had to make the choices that they knew were best in the wake of others trying to articulate upon the fact that they were not making the best choices, only to find out later. This is energy that often has the modality by which another person comes back to them and says, "I understand now. I see I was energetically wrong. I see I've reached the maturation point in seeing the fact that you were making a mature choice." But the hard part with that work is it does not, it, like, the apology does not erase the wound. It doesn't make it go away. It creates a balm in the space by which it reaffirms, but it's a lonely place, right? It's a lonely, blessed place to exist in the space by which you know you're making the right choices. But even as you do so, you recognize often that there's energy that will not come into that understanding until later. And so for a lot of that energy working through those modalities or experiences, especially with emotionality like we have during these particular eclipse cycles, feelings from the past reemerging, but the feeling of the emotions that are fortified with the understanding of the self. It's an emotional time, and it's reaffirming, and there's catharsis there, but I even keep on getting, it's the catharsis happening in the observation of another learning, and I keep on hearing that work is always empowering, but it's bittersweet. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and receiving it. Just a reminder, if you'd like to book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you would like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my site, so I would encourage you to do it there. A couple of updates before we move into personal readings today. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who participated in our recent class on the world card. We've got tarot class tonight, and you are welcome to join us. You can still sign up. All you need to do if you'd like to become part of that tarot class is head on over to my stack and become a paid subscriber. We are going to be studying the court cards in the Sword Suite this evening, and your subscription will give you entry to our class tonight, as well as access, if you are a monthly subscriber, to over 9 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class archive. It's not necessary to catch up. I'll be giving you an update on everything we've studied prior to beginning the next class, but the material is there for you to receive as you're ready to receive it. You'll also have access to a complimentary You also have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything we've learned and studied thus far. And if you become a founding member, not only will you receive a discount on the full year's worth of classes, but you'll also have access to over 20 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library Class Archive, as well as the opportunity of receiving a complimentary one-on-one mentorship class with me, where I will meet with you personally to assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes to the best of your advantage moving towards your tarot goals going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. Don't let your lack of experience or your robust experience prevent you from joining us in these classes. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my stack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings or services. I also post my weekly newsletter there, which will give you insights in terms of my schedule, both in person and online, as well as my mystic meditation articles. I just wrote one recently on navigating this new moon energy that we're experiencing. I also want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I also offer mentorship classes. These are for any of my students that are seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. I take a very limited number of students for this reason, as those classes are focused on each individual's personal spiritual goals and journey work. Those classes can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits. Also, for my students seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, I'm very happy to offer weekly tarot insight packages. That is a package of 4 30-minute readings, again, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. I'm also very happy to now offer dream interpretation readings, which can be purchased per dream or as a series. If you purchase the series, I would encourage you to start to keep a dream journal, as we will meet weekly or biweekly with that journal and utilize the tarot to understand the key themes and messages coming towards you in the dream space. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages, and we will do this again tomorrow.